I want to tell you about a pair of epiphanies that I had in 1996. The first happened in March of 1996 when I was diagnosed with both AIDS and cancer. I tell you this early on because I want your sympathy throughout the rest of this speech. When you mention AIDS or cancer, people... So the nausea that was treated, that was caused by these things, ended instantly with marijuana. With one puff of marijuana, well, you know, thank Mother Nature for that. That's one of nature's gods, you know, from the Declaration of Independence. It is something that's been around for more than 5,000 years, and it hasn't killed anyone. I'm rather taken aback. I wasn't expecting applause at this point, like I was expecting it later after I talked you into medical marijuana, you see. So, like I'm 15 minutes of nothing to do if you applaud too early here. So please, be a little hard sell for a while, okay? Anyway, here I am, and it is astonishing how well it works. And you have to understand how serious it is when you can't keep your medication down. It's not just that it's uncomfortable. If you can't keep that medication down, it's not going to save your life. And that is the important point. We're talking about life and death here when we're talking about treating AIDS and cancer. 20% of the people who are not taking the combination therapy, which is working so well for those who can tolerate it. I am one of them. But for those who cannot tolerate it, 20% stop because of nausea. I wonder how many of those 20%, if they had access, readily available, inexpensive medical marijuana, if indeed they would have that same problem. Every day, people are denied cancer chemotherapy because the doctors stop, knowing that they will die of malnutrition if they go another day without eating. Nausea is an unsolved problem of medicine, and marijuana is the finest anti-nausea medication known to science. At the same time, our leaders have lied about this consistently. Our leaders whom we trust, whom we look up to, from the Democratic president to the who knows what he is, drug czar, to the Republican leaders in Congress in both the House and the Senate. They have lied to us about medical marijuana. They have lied to us about the harm of marijuana. There is no more benign medicinal substance known to human beings. And we have been lied about this. And so this was my first epiphany, was over here, watching my normal run to the bathroom with one puff of marijuana turn into a meandering raid on the kitchen. And so the one epiphany was over here, and I said, I am not going to rest until medical marijuana is available to every sick person who needs it in the United States. Epiphany 2 came exactly 2 years ago, probably today, when I lay in bed smoking marijuana. See, I hadn't smoked marijuana for a couple of decades. I believed all those lies having to do with lack of mental clarity and short-term where was I? Anyway, all of that nonsense is really a lot of nonsense, and boy, do I regret those 2 decades I wasn't smoking pot. So I can honestly say I was not a pot smoker before I started using marijuana. So there I was in July, and I was smoking pot, and boy, was I enjoying myself. And I was channel surfing, and I was smoking pot, and I was really grooving on this whole thing called chemotherapy. And I get to these people talking, mostly men with pot bellies and t-shirts. And they would be talking, and one of them would tell the truth. And I kind of sat there stunned. Who expects truth on C-SPAN? I'm sorry, that was a Congress joke. Nothing to do with C-SPAN, we love you. Oh. Thank you for your airspace, C-SPAN, we love you, yes. And during the 2 years since those dual epiphanies, my pair of epiphanies there, in that time, it has risen to this point right here, right now, July 4th, 1998, Washington, D.C. I believe medical marijuana currently stands for the most hideous ongoing example of government. It is astonishing how well it works. And you have to understand how serious it is when you can't keep your medication down. It's not just that it's uncomfortable. If you can't keep that medication down, it's not going to save your life. And that is the important point. We're talking about life and death here when we're talking about treating AIDS and cancer. 20% of the people who are not taking the combination therapy, which is working so well for those who can tolerate it. I am one of them. Every day, people are denied cancer chemotherapy because the doctors stop, knowing that they will die of malnutrition if they go another day without eating. Nausea is an unsolved problem of medicine, and marijuana is the finest anti-nausea medication known to science. At the same time, our leaders have lied about this consistently. Our leaders whom we trust, whom we look up to, from the Democratic president to the who knows what he is, drug czar, to the Republican leaders in Congress of both the House and the Senate. They have lied to us about medical marijuana. They have lied to us about the harm of marijuana. There is no more benign medicinal substance known to human beings. And we have been lied about this. And so this was my first epiphany, was over here, watching my normal run to the bathroom with one puff of marijuana turn into a meandering raid on the kitchen. And so the one epiphany was over here, and I said, I am not going to rest until medical marijuana is available to every sick person who needs it in the United States. I believe medical marijuana currently stands for the most hideous ongoing example of government interference in the private lives of individuals. This medical marijuana prohibition is an outrage within an outrage within an outrage. The first outrage, of course, is the war on drugs itself. Prohibition does not work, has not worked, cannot work, and anyone who says it can is either deeply delusional or is making money on the drug war. The next layer down is, of course, marijuana prohibition. Marijuana, 61 years ago, was unjustly based upon lies from a self-serving drug czar of his time, to a Congress who ate it up like milk because it was hot and they wanted to get home. It happened in the summer. And so they voted in the Marijuana Tax Act. And the prohibition since then has been unrelenting. More than 12 million Americans have been arrested for marijuana since that time. This is a plant that has never hurt anyone in 5,000 years. And in a country where 400,000 people die prematurely of cigarettes, and 100,000 people die prematurely from alcohol, that this herb, this plant, this weed, should be so illegal in this country that since the 1995 Omnibus Crime Bill, if you possess enough of it, our government will put you to death. If you don't think marijuana is still prohibited, keep in mind that 640,000 people were arrested in 1996 alone, the most ever, while we have a Speaker of the House and a President and a Vice President who have all admitted to smoking marijuana. That's one arrest every 48 seconds. These are pothead baby boomers, and it's an outrage that they should put their fellows in prison. Finally, the outrage within the outrage within the outrage is medical marijuana. In the war on drugs, unlike any war in American history, unlike any modern civilized war of the past 2 centuries, in this war on drugs, they are not stopping the battle and allowing the Red Cross on the field. In fact, they are shooting directly at the sick and at those who are trying to help them, and they are shooting to kill. A friend of mine, Todd McCormick, was arrested for growing marijuana in his own home after the Proposition 215 passed in California permitting him cultivation. He had cancer 9 times before he was 10. The DEA came in, destroyed his plants, and wants to put him in prison for the rest of his life, a 10-year mandatory minimum, plus a $4 million fine. That's shooting to kill. It's been going on for 11 months now. As many of you know, I've been investigated now for 11 months by the DEA and their bosom buddy, the IRS. The DEA and the IRS came into my home. They took away my computer containing a book on medical marijuana and a book critical of the DEA, which very quickly became 3 books critical of the DEA. Don't tread on this faggot. That's the new buzzword, like communists. It's like if they accuse you of being a legalizer, please don't resist. Yeah, I'm a legalizer. Absolutely. I believe that everything should be legally sold in the free market, equally and open to competition. That's what I believe as a libertarian. You know, of all the compliments I got for Ain't Nobody's Business If You Do, and I got a lot of them, people as diverse as Archbishop Tutu and Sting, and Hugh Downs, and gee, gosh, you see, it does work after all, and Larry King. All those people were kind enough, but the thing that meant the absolute most was when Milton Friedman, unasked, sent me a very nice letter. And Milton is a great hero of mine, and I know of many people in this room. And if you're watching, Milton, know that we send you our love and nature's God's blessing from the Libertarian Convention. So William Bennett is personally responsible for the fact that needle exchange was not put into effect 10 years ago. 10 years ago, the studies were there that showed that needles significantly reduced the spread of AIDS and at the same time did not spread the use of drugs. Bennett at the time said, yes, of course we care about the AIDS epidemic, but we care about the signal we're going to send our children more. He personally fought for and got not only not federal funding for needles, but having them made illegal. As a direct result of him, 200,000 people in this country now have AIDS. It is about the only way AIDS got into the heterosexual population. 1/3 of all AIDS cases now is from drug use or their sexual partners. 60% of all new AIDS cases next year will be female partners of those 200,000 people who got it intravenously and will pass it on to their lovers, wives, and children, often without not even knowing it. Thank you, William Bennett. McCaffrey, 10 years later, the government admits that yes, indeed, needle exchange works, it doesn't make drug use go up, and it does certainly make AIDS spreading go down. Who in the entire administration fought the hardest and even went to the Republicans in order to get federal funding for needle programs banned? Drug czar General Barry McCaffrey. So I move that we call heterosexual AIDS the Bennett-McCaffrey illness. Or the BM disease. We all know that William Bennett has been taking money from dark organizations so that he will continue to perpetrate the war on drugs so that they can profit. One of those is the Partnership for a Drug-Free America. He has bribed you sit in his office, and all day long these platinum Halliburton cases go in and they go out empty, and they go in full and they go out empty. They're full of eclairs. I'm a gay libertarian. I'm one of those laissez-fairies. Public opinion polls are outrageously in favor of medical marijuana, and almost every politician vigorously objects. Public opinion polls show that somewhere between 65 and 90% of the population, but never below 65, favor marijuana under the care of a doctor's supervision. They do that even though all the living presidents and Nancy Reagan said it was a hoax, even though C. Everett Koop came out and said it was a hoax, which really hurt. People still believe that if a doctor says it's okay, and if you're sick, it's okay to take medicine, and we make exceptions when people are sick. That compassion has not been beaten out of the American people. It is still there, and we can appeal to it. The drug warriors have been so opposed to marijuana, especially medical marijuana. They have done it on the record, they have done it recently. In December, the National Academy of Sciences Institute of Medicine report will come out. This is the one that McCaffrey spent $1 million of our tax money on, about the only good federal expenditure last year, if you ask me. And he took that money and he used it for a study that was going to last 18 months. And he's been hiding behind that ever since. He won't talk about the medical marijuana issue. He'll say, we've turned that over to the doctors. Let them decide. Well, we know pretty much what the doctors are going to decide. They are not under federal control like the National Institute of Health or the National, what's the other one? NIDA, National Institute of Drug Abuse. And so they will come up with a report. What report did they come up in 1982? In 1982, they determined that regular marijuana, the prohibition of just plain marijuana, not medical marijuana, was doing more harm than good, and it should be legalized at once. Now, this same august body of independent scientists are now not going to reach the conclusion that under a doctor's care, under a physician's instructions, you can't take this? It is inconceivable to me for that to happen. So sometime around the end of the year or the beginning of next year, McCaffrey will be in a very tight place. Because there's 18 months of videos of him saying, I'm not talking about that, we've turned that over to science and we're going to let science decide. So science will decide. Then what? Stick around, it's going to be the best show in town. The most exciting news, you may or may not have heard this, but in October 1997, the Society for Neurosciences published a report. And that report said, this is based on scientific evidence from 4 universities, and it began of the 97 million Americans who each year experience some form of pain. And they recommended medical marijuana and the cannabinoids therein. 97 million Americans. Marijuana has this unique property of filtering out pain while allowing through the sense of touch and the sense of pleasure. All other analgesics that work beyond the level of aspirin work by suppressing feeling overall. Marijuana filters out only the bad stuff. So imagine those 97 million people turning around and saying, why? People have been in intractable pain for years, for decades, turning around and saying, why didn't I have this medication before? And they will look to the Democrats, guilty. They will look to the Republicans, guilty. They will look to the Libertarians, we told you so. If the Libertarians, and finally, and most briefly, I ask you to support medical marijuana now because it is the right thing to do. I'm tired of people thinking that libertarians don't have morality, that they don't have values. It's a lot of hogwash. Libertarians are the only politicians with values. There is great harm being done, and we must stop it because we can stop it, and we can stop it now. Well, not yet. You know, on C-SPAN, those bars, those great pillars of the Capitol, almost looks like you're standing in front of prison bars. And I look there and I think, that's where the federal government wants me for the rest of my life for taking my medicine. And so I ask you, who are the beacons of liberty in this country, and I ask you in the name of her, that Lady Liberty there. You know, I'm gay, but that woman turns me on. In fact, she's only one of 3 women I've ever been inside. My mother told me that joke. Not quite that way. She stole it from Woody Allen. Anyway, I asked the Libertarian Party to take this healing herb and use it to heal. Yes, you too. We'll be doing it for you, crying in the corner there, that baby. will be doing it for you, our children. And I ask you to take that herb, that healing herb, and I ask you to heal the body politic with it. And I ask you, Lady Liberty, to once again lift your shining lamp above the golden door. Hey, lady, got a light? Thank you.